You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Attention business owners and independent contractors. This is a money-saving message from Tax Mediation Services. If your business owes $20,000 or more in taxes, we can help you today, right now. Listen, dealing with the IRS is no picnic. It's an intimidating and extremely stressful process, and you don't want to go it alone. Our attorneys know every law, every tax break, and every possible opportunity to help you resolve and reduce your tax debt. And if you owe more than $20,000, you may be at the top of their hit list. So don't take your tax debt lightly, because it will not go away on its own. The IRS can seize your bank accounts, your home, and even shut down your business. Call our tax experts today at 1-800-783-0810 and let us deal with the IRS while you focus on your business. That's 1-800-783-0810. Again, that's 800-783-0810.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is, if getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now, 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
Remember the fallen host, Sergeant Dave. After the survival instincts of a 10-ton transport vehicle rollover accident in the Parwan province of Afghanistan in 2004, he emerges and returns to the state.
Back. I'm Sergeant Dave with the Remember the Fallen show's content. We will be drilling down on topics that affect our veterans. The cataclysm of Agent Orange, veteran suicide, the conundrum of Kill 22, and Judicial Watch's insight on Homeland Security, and much, much more.
Share with you with a fervor of enthusiasm to all patriots across the windswept fields of America.
I'm back with vengeance. You're about to listen to me, the host of the Remember the Fallen show, with me, Sergeant Dave, where you will be listening to my guests, jarheads, squids, wingnuts, ground pounders, and an occasional coastie, maybe not. But most of all, I will be advocating to patriots like you that get a lump in their throat when they hear the national anthem being played at a ball game. You see, one of us can be run off, two of us can be disregarded, but a show's audience, together, we are a movement. Okay, today's movement really comes close to home. Here I have is Dennis Woody Woodcomb, and he is like one of the first military social workers that came out of UCF in 2013. The ironic thing, this guy, right, he's always been 4 years ahead of me, right? So he's been everywhere I've been, okay? So I've been at the Seminole County Veterans Stand Down, but he was there in 2012. I was there in 2015. I'm an American Legion member. He's a service officer. He's also involved with Disabled American Veterans Life member, as I am. He's also involved with the Mission Continues, as I am. And also he's the Student Veterans American UCF alumni, as I am. Also, he graduated bachelor's degree. Now he went on to his master's degree with Chapter 31. And here I have is Woody. Woody, tell me a little bit about what you're doing now, and what makes you still stay involved with so much veteran advocacy.
Thank you, Dave, for the great introduction, and go Knights. I was like a lot of veterans that did not really want to use my benefits or do things. If I didn't need them, I didn't want to use them. And then in 2008, I lost a job that I thought I was going to be at until I retired. And so, here I am. I'm unemployed. I had been diagnosed with diabetes for 7 years. My health insurance was going away. I didn't really know what to do. A Vietnam veteran buddy of mine, I talked with him and he said, why don't you apply at the VA? And I said, well, isn't that just for lifers and Purple Heart guys? He said, no, if you're economically strapped, you can go ahead and apply. Go ahead and do it and see what happens. Well, I applied and I was able to qualify for VA medical. And then while I was out looking for employment, I went to the old workforce and I was assigned a veterans representative, and he asked me if I had any disabilities, and I told him I was diabetic. And I didn't know if that was a disability or not. And he told me, did you know that over 90% of Vietnam veterans are diabetic due to Agent Orange?
Well, it's knowledge of what's going on out there. And I think the VA system is keeping that stuff quiet back then. Now it's transparent. I mean, it's out in the street that if you have any type of VA connection, go to the VA. It is more prominent now. People are telling people, and now they're getting more advised to go to the VA. So I was in the same boat as you, Dennis. When I come out of back from Afghanistan, I didn't feel like I needed to go to the VA, because you don't want to take away someone who got amputated their leg, or they got an IED bad and they have traumatic brain injury, and you don't want to take away those funds, right? I felt the same exact way, and a lot of us soldiers do that. So we're asking you veterans out there to put down that pride. This is in place for you to take not advantage of the benefits. You earn these benefits. You put your life on the line, and we hear that a lot with other veterans as well.
Yeah, and I do really have to agree with that. What happened with me was this gentleman gave me a business card for the Seminole County Veteran Service Office Kathy Schubert there, who is one of the veteran service officers there, was excellent. And one of the things that I have to really say in regards to that is that veteran service officers, the county veteran service officers, are advocates for the veterans. There used to be a thing at the VA itself where a lot of the representatives were like just 9 to 5 or working. You were just another file on the pile. But these people, they're there for.
Well, so where did you see the passion for you being a veterans advocate for what you're doing now? I'm looking at your resume, and it's like 2 pages long. And, I called you a pioneer earlier, and you said, no, you're not a pioneer. Well, from what I'm seeing, you give a lot back. So what turned that passion on for you to do what you do in the veterans community now?
When one of the things that I found out, once I received a disability for my diabetes, well then having a service-connected disability qualified me for Chapter 31 of the VA Voc Rehab program to go ahead and continue my education. I showed up looking for a job and ended up going back to college. And during the process in between for about a year, I had been exposed to people at the VA in different capacities and all that. And the social workers that were veterans themselves were actually superior, I felt, to the non-veteran social work. They'd been there, done that. They understood, what you were going through. And then, so when I went to Chapter 31, I had to take an aptitude test. I scored very well for social work, and I had to pick a major, and I decided on social work as my major to focus on veterans and military.
Outstanding. So you found your niche. And that's what a lot of veterans got to do out there. They got to find their niche in the community. And if you have to, volunteer like Dennis has done. He's been out there just finding what areas that he is passionate with. He took an aptitude. Many people have an opportunity to take a test and find out what they're good at. But he actually went to a lot of places where he volunteered at that made a difference to a lot of veterans out there. So what advice, Woody, would you give the veteran who's 3 years back from, deployment? He's back. He got out of the military. He doesn't really know what to do. He's running out of funds. He's going from job to job. So what kind of advice would you give that veteran who just doesn't know which way to turn at this time?
Not just that veteran, but all veterans, that even whether they're having a hard time or not, there are so many resources available through the VA, and I would advise anyone that's a veteran to go to a veteran service office, go to the VA itself. They have employment. They have help with employment. There may be counseling that you're needed. One of the things I learned about VA is if you don't ask, you don't get.
Here you go. Perfect advice there, right? You hear it? Say that again, Dennis?
If you don't ask, you don't get.
Right. Talk about this now. And you got to find these resources. I found this resource, and who I bump into? I bump into Woody at the Vet Center, right? We had the opportunity to get our free will done by a great lawyer. He just gives everything he can out to our veterans, and I'll have his name here in a minute. I just don't have the card in front of me. So I go in the Vet Center, and there's Woody and his wife, and here I am. I'm ready to do a will. He's doing a will. He's looking, take it. He knows the resources as well as I do. So if you just Google this stuff, you just find the resources. Military Times has resources. So these are things that are out there for you. You just gotta go look for it and find it, or find that vet center near you. Go to that Allegiant, go to the VFW, join these groups. I know it's $30 a year. You might not get involved with the total environment, but take advantage of the resources at these veteran organizations, because they will help you in the long run. And that's what you gotta do. You gotta connect a network of people like yourself, and so you don't have to keep yourself shuttered away. You want to be out there and join some of these groups, volunteer, like the Mission Continues, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know you were a Mission Continues guy, wearing the blue shirts and everything. You probably went with the platoon side. I went with the fellowship side, so there's two different sides of it. Mm-hmm. So I actually used my Mission Continues Continues, and I work with the Paralyzed Veterans of America and at the USO. So where did your Mission Continues? What kind of work did you do with the Mission Continues?
Originally, I got involved with Mission Continues when I was a student at UCF.
Okay.
I mean, I consider myself a late bloomer, baby boomer.
Yeah.
And I went back, I was 59 years old. I'm a Vietnam, Dave may have not mentioned it, but I'm a Vietnam veteran. And I went back when I was 59 years old. I went to Seminole State. This is what the VA Voc Rehab program did. I went there for my prereqs and I got an AA degree there. I got my Bachelor of Social Work degree at UCF, and I got my advanced standing Master's Social Work degree at UCF. And this old fart graduated with a 3.75 GPA, so you can teach old dogs new tricks.
Hoorah for that! You hear that, man? Okay. See, I told you this guy was ahead of me. I graduated when I was 56, and you graduated when? How old were you when you got your master's?
62 years old.
62. Wow. Yeah. So we're both old dogs that can learn new trick, go back there, and it was a culture change. Wouldn't you agree? When you went back to UCF, a little bit culture change. When you're walking around with the young kids and students, how'd you feel being in that type of environment when you were the grandfather of the class?
Well, you know, one of the things, I didn't get my education alone. Yeah. A lot of my classmates, and besides the instructors and in all this, were very, very helpful. There were kids that could have been my grandchildren teaching me how to do things, you know, with the computer that I had no idea about. And, you know, if it wasn't for them, I probably would not have been able to complete my education. And I loved everyone. It's one of the best things that's ever happened in my life. But if I hadn't had went to apply for the VA Voc Rehab program, all of that would not have been there.
Wow, that's outstanding that you've done that. Chapter 31, yes, I do take my hat off for them. I salute them. They've done great at and SVA, Student Veterans of America. You know, they did a great job as well. So, you know, Woody did a great paper, and I just want to hit some bullet points of the paper he did. Did an outstanding paper, and I'm just going to read up a little bit on it because it kind of brings it forward of what's going on with the VA system, why it's in such of a backlog mode. So basically it's because of collateral damage. You know, collateral damage was born from the military commitments of the 20th and 21st century with the race for industrialization at the same disregarding the human race. It was a trade-off for war. They either, you know, with our mentality, the United States had their unscrupulous tactics to intentionally put American soldiers in harm's way, and decades later you see a bogged down VA system that is a fewbar. Yep, it's a fewbar. It's a foxtrot up beyond all repair. In tonight's show, we will just barely turn the page on 5 areas that are bringing the VA to its knees. Okay, the first is atomic veterans. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Next is Agent Orange, Gulf War syndrome, burn pits, and water contamination at Marine Corps bases of Camp Lejeune, Camp Pendleton, El Toro, and now most recently 99 Palms, right? And some of the key words we will be discussing today will be, of course, exposure, contamination, service-connected, prevalence, and disabilities. Now, the mindset of the United States military has put us actually in this junction, in this quandary, and this mindset is that we will do whatever it takes to win the battle. Now, a famous quotation from General Douglas MacArthur, in war, there's no substitute for victory. And that's what we're seeing with the VA system. Now, if you fast forward to 2018, as the burn pit smoke clears, we refer to the term, once again, as collateral damage. As it applies here, refers to the damage that has been inflicted on the members of the United States Armed Services as a consequent intentional of their service in the areas of radiation risk, as in atomic veterans. How about the battlefield herbicide used in Agent Orange, right? Medically unexplained illnesses in the Gulf War syndrome, health effects from burn pit smoke, and contamination of the water supply at domestic locations, Camp Lejeune, Camp Pendleton, El Toro, and also outside the U.S. territory, Agent Orange survivors of Guam. So please go to that website. Brian Moyer, Big B Marine, will be a regular guest on the show, and go to his Facebook page at Agent Orange Survivors of Guam. Look up his files. He'll explain everything what's going on there. He is going to Washington, D.C. every 3 months. He is getting it done with the HR on that. So this focus of this show is to analyze the service members, the veterans, and their families, including third generation now, Woody. You know, this gets down to third generation.
Oh, yeah, it really has. There are a lot of birth defects and a lot of other things that have come down genetically for the servicemen and their families, and it affects them, a great deal.
Yes. Okay, so that's what we're going to focus on today is to analyze the service members, veterans, and families, once again, including the third generation who've been adversely affected by the intentional or unintentional misuse of material exposure in pursuing the goals of military accomplishment. See, the future can only tell if military social workers' efforts at interventions in this area will benefit these military clients and generations that have been infected through the veterans' bloodstream by advocating a sense of social justice, which is totally arbitrary through my eyes. So that's why I brought in a Vietnam veteran who has Agent Orange, who's been a Vietnam in the community advocating for the last decade. And this is why, Dennis, you mentioned me early in a conversation as the military personnel were assets. What did you mean by that when you used the term assets?
When I was in basic training, we were told we were military property. Yeah. Just like a Jeep, just like anything, a bunk or anything like that. And that, they didn't look at us as individual people, individuals, with a lot of different things, that we were there as, basically any type of military material that was needed for a purpose. And when you actually got orders to go somewhere, your MOS was considered a stock number.
Yeah, I remember those days, right? Okay, so let's fast forward. I mean, let's go back a little bit. I'm not going to spend too much time, but on, atomic veterans. It's scary. I mean, that term, like when I first read your article on that, wow, it hit me. I mean, I was like, how apropos, like back then, we had a World War I artillery officer, Truman, right? President Truman, in the White House during the birth of the atomic age, right? And what timing to have him in there, because you have the Hiroshima, Nagasaki, 1945 and 1946, prisoners of war in Japan in World War II, atmospheric test in Nevada and the Pacific Ocean, 1945-1962, underground nuclear weapons at Abechitik Island in Alaska prior to January 1st, 1974. The maliciousness of these events bears the seed of complacency in our government to where we are today, and that the insatiable attitude to victory to whatever the cost. Okay? So this attitude is putting our armed forces in harm's way. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, a very good friend of mine was part of this. He's passed away now. He was also a Vietnam veteran, but he's what's called an atomic veteran. He was exposed to radiation during one of the atomic tests. They would put troops out there, and they really didn't, one of the things is they really didn't know how dangerous all the nuclear stuff was. So they put these guys out there more or less like guinea pigs.
Yes.
And to see what effects radiation would have, because they were considered property. They were considered expendable. And over the years, the long-term effects, they could never conceive of what a long-term effect would be. The only effects they really knew was the immediate effects that they saw in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Right. Okay, so let's go a little bit faster forward to your Vietnam era time, okay? And that was Agent Orange, right? It was the technology name is 2378 tetrachlorodibenzo, which is really called dioxin, okay? Dioxin is the most lethal commercial produced chemical that man has ever invented, and it's short for TCDD. So, dioxin is the most feared of family of 75 related compounds known as chlorinated dioxin. Popularity known is also described as the most, once again, toxic chemical, or one of the most toxic chemicals produced by man. That description, however, refers to its toxicity. In some animals, its toxicity to humans remains a dispute, right? The chemical has proved toxic virtually every major organ system in in one type of laboratory animal, right, or another, and has caused both cancer and reproductive abnormalities in various species, right? So virtually everyone agrees that dioxin has no redeeming qualities. Dioxin on foliage is known to break down in a matter of days when exposed to sunlight, but dioxin in the soil can persist for years. However, it moves slowly in soil and is practically insoluble in water. So this is what they put 19 million gallons in Vietnam for a decade. Now, you were there. What else can you tell us about that time frame that would help our audience just wrap their heads around? What was the government thinking when they put this type of toxicity out there to our armed forces?
Well, one of the things is the government wasn't thinking.
Yeah, I think so.
And a lot of it was Monsanto was the manufacturer of Agent Orange, and there was a lot of things. They didn't do long-term research studies on this. They went ahead and released this for use as, part of our arsenal to help us in Vietnam. And it proved to be very effective as a defoliant. But they never did study the long-term effects on what would happen.
They did a short-term study. I did some research, Dennis. I wanted to spring this up on you, right? But a lot of people, right, didn't know this, but the Agent Orange went into a full usage in Southeast Asia, as we know, but it went through its trials at CFB Cagetown in New Brunswick, Canada. And there were literally hundreds of military and civic personnel that became afflicted with all sorts of diseases, including cancer, right? The VA and the Canadian government are like the three bloody monkeys: hear, see, and speak no evil. The hardest hit with this during this trial were the civilian personnel who worked at the base and were the ones driving around the base with jeeps and foggers attached to the back. So they had almost absolutely no recourse in the matter other than a class action suit, with most of them workers already passed on Agent Orange caused afflictions. So this was a trial in New Brunswick, Canada, but they did not keep the trial going. They moved ahead. Somebody approved it and said, we need it now. It's going to save lives. We'll deal with it, the repercussions later. That's what pretty much happened there. Okay, so what other areas did they approve? We know they approved Southeast Asia. We know they approved Guam, right, a U.S. territory. Woody, what other areas do you know that can help the audience out there? Maybe they were in these areas. Maybe they handled this stuff. What other areas do you know?
Okay, the military released information about the Korean DMZ. Between April 1968 and July 1969, they used Agent Orange as a defoliant there. Many of the veterans that served there have no idea that they may have been in an area that was contaminated by Agent Orange. Another place is the Forest Service. They thought that we were told that you could bathe in the stuff, it wouldn't hurt you. So a lot of the Forest Service personnel may have been exposed too when they were using it in our national forest, along with, people that have visited the national.
Not only that, I spoke to a wife, a widow warrior. Her husband told her before he died that they allowed them to barbecue in it. They cut the drums in half, and they were bathing in it, and they were catching a couple of live animals out in the woods of Vietnam, and they were cooking out of them, and they weren't cleaning them thoroughly because they were told it was a safe product. Now, can you believe them telling them of a safe product like that? Now, any biologist who is worth his or her salt can tell you have just a handful of cells in a plant, right? The large central vacuole cell walls and the chloroplast and so on. But compared to the human body, you have 15 trillion cells. Yeah, you would think our government would have gave it some thought before contaminating over 2 million Vietnam veterans with this toxic cocktail. And they were told by their upper command it was harmless, right? They got 55-gallon drums. Like I said, they cut them in half. They were bathing in it, having barbecues out of that. Now, that is like Oscar Mike golf. What would they think of? Now, every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, the VA takes a bite of a shit sandwich. Yep, because our government is unscrupulous actions of our armed forces. This has got my positive blood boiling. Take over the mic, Woody, while I get some fresh air. I made something that I might regret.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, the thing is, it's the neglect of our military and the trying to look the other way through the VA. Before 1991, when it was declared a presumptive illness, Agent Orange related disability claims, they put the guys through hell. They had to produce all kind of medical information. They had to produce all kind of statements from people in their occupations where they worked, to where they were questioning whether or not they could have got this from the trades they were working in or whatever. And luckily, foresight of General Shinseki with the VA, he went ahead and allowed this to be declared a presumptive illness. So, just by having boots on the ground in Vietnam at the time, the VA went ahead and decided to award this service-connected disability. Along with that, though, in my particular case, I was awarded for diabetes, but one of the factors is, too, along with diabetes, is peripheral neuropathy. My peripheral neuropathy, they refused because I did not have enough evidence to be awarded on a claim. So what I did, I went to my VA doctor. She went ahead and set up a session with a neurologist who went ahead and did the testing, and along with other medical evidence from when I was diagnosed with diabetes that I submitted, I was able to receive that disability rating.
Now, you mentioned hell for the serviceman, right? What happens when the serviceman dies from Agent Orange and the widow warrior is left cleaning up the mess, right? Has to track down the paperwork, has to get her dependent indemnity claim in on time. So these widow warriors are the ones that I'm really concerned about. What the government has done is really bullied them. And, I have a soft heart for these widow warriors because I have a Facebook page where I'm the administrator. So please go to U.S. Wives and Widow Warriors of Agent Orange on Facebook. We have 387 members, and these women are pouring their hearts out on social media, and they're telling their story. And right now, I have some of the true stories that I know from these U.S. Wives and Widow Warriors of Agent Orange, okay? You have Eddie Corniglia. Her daughter of 31, diagnosed with uterine cancer, underwent a hysterectomy, can never have children, and her husband passed away from Agent Orange in 1993. Here it is, going down the bloodstream. Okay, so here are the list of some of the diseases, illnesses that can be passed on to children of Vietnam veterans by conception, but not limited to spina bifida, variety of cancers like uterine, diabetes, learning and development delays, endometriosis, variety of minor and major birth defects, immune system abnormalities as children mature, diseases associated to Agent Orange dioxin can be realized, and also dioxin resides in fatty tissue of the body. Until such time, incubation period time, it may decide to show its ugly head. Much depends on the strength of an individual's immune system. So that's why when these veterans get to their 60s, later 70s and stuff like that, that's when these illnesses arise. So keep in mind, these are human stories. We have Patty Gullickson, husband, 100% disabled, had 3 fingers on his left hand amputated and 1 on his right hand, has osteomyelitis, infection in the bone, starts with open sores or burns, requires dressing changes every 3 hours. Now, Woody, you talked earlier that now they're getting a care. They're getting whoever's the caretaker in the family are assisting with. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, the thing is, and one of the good things that I think the VA is actually getting better. I think the VA is actually starting to pay attention. I think, the government isn't really a bad guy. They're the government. They might be just kind of dumb and not really look at what the issues are. That's why grassroots efforts like Dave's is so very important. And when it comes to the caregivers now, caregivers can apply to the VA for compensation. They can apply for respite care because, when you're a 24/7 caregiver, you got to get away at some point. And, so there's a lot of resources now that are provided by the VA, not only to assist the veteran himself, but also to assist his caregiver. When Dave talks about the spouses, one thing a lot of spouses of veterans that have Agent Orange don't realize that they may not be able to get widow's pension because if the veteran dies from symptoms of Agent Orange and they're not listed on the death certificate properly, it will not be approved.
Right, so let's just get something across here. This is what it's called, DIC, Dependency and Indemnity Compensation. Okay, so it's a benefit paid to eligible survivors of military service members who died while on active duty, or active duty for training, or inactive duty training, or veterans whose death resulted from a service-related injury or disease. Agent Orange, right? Yes. Veteran whose death resulted from a non-service-related injury or disease, and who was receiving or was entitled to receive VA compensation for service-connected disabilities that was rated as totally disabling for at least 10 years immediately before death. So since the veteran's released from active duty and for at least 5 years immediately preceding death, for at least 1 year before death, the veteran was a former prisoner of war who died after September 30th, 1999. Yeah, there's some wording in this. It might sound a little difficult, but who is eligible is the surviving spouse as well. As long as she's validly married the veteran before January 1st, 1957, or was married to a service member who died on active duty for training, or inactive duty training, or married the veteran within 15 years of discharge from the period of military service in which disease or injury that caused the veteran's death began, was aggravated, was married to the veteran for at least 1 year, or had a child with the veteran, cohabitated with the veteran continuously until the veteran's death, or if separated, was not at fault for the separation and is not currently remarried. So these are some of the things you have to look up. And the only way to do that is get a hold of the VA.gov and go into the VA. There's a lot of volunteers there to help you. So if you're a widow warrior, go to our page, U.S. Wives Widow Warriors of Agent Orange. Answer the 3 questions. I'm going to be the one to approve it. So just share with me of why relevant to you, and we'll get you some help, get some advice, some resources on that page. And of course, there's a plethora of resources here with Woody. Woody's been a great advocate for that. But let's talk about a little bit more about what you're doing also, as well as how you're helping veterans with Veterans Court. Can you explain that a little bit to me, what you're doing in that, Woody?
Veterans Court is a diversionary treatment court that you have to have certain eligibility for this. It's not with any crimes whatsoever, but the objective of the program is that treatment is much more preferable than punishment. You can send these veterans who may be suffering from PTSD, who may have certain service-connected things, and a lot of veterans, even today, are like me, like I was, that I didn't realize that I had the resources available. And once these guys get in trouble, I'm a mentor for the Seminole County Veterans Court, which started back in 2012. The veterans themselves, once they go through this program, they get plugged into the VA. They get the resource. They have to utilize the resources for the VA for substance abuse. They have to utilize the resources VA for mental health. They have to utilize the resources for their physical health. They also assign to the Seminole County Probation Office, so they are on probation. They get drug tested constantly. They have to do follow-ups. They have to meet their court dates. There's a large criteria that these veterans have to follow, and it's not easy. And not every veteran that is incarcerated or that is arrested are eligible for that. But the ones that are, did a survey several years ago. Judge Woodard, who is the presiding judge in the Seminole County Veterans Court, was awarded the National Association of Social Workers elected official. And doing the research, it was discovered that the success rate for veterans in the Veterans Court is 79%, which is very, very good. Not only does it help the veterans themselves, it helps their families, it helps the community, which is better than just putting somebody in jail and having them come out sometimes even worse than when they went in as far as their attitude. A lot of these veterans just don't know what resources are available that they can use, and the Veterans Courts plug these people in. I have a mentee right now who's in the domiciliary down in Lake Nona. He's ready to get out. He was a heroin addict, weighed 98 pounds when he was arrested, and he attributes the a VA social worker that went into the jail and found him as saving him. And he's very compliant. If you're not compliant, you get thrown out of the program. You get thrown out of the program and continue to be non-compliant, you will do your jail.
All right, Woody, now you're talking about jail time, right? Okay, let's say they do their jail time. They do 8 months. They come out of jail, right? And, like, nobody picks them up. They realize, what now? What am I going to do now? Okay, so they go back to their old routine. They go back to drinking. They go back to doing drugs. They're in that rut. They can't get a job. And then they realize, oh, I'll pan for money. I'll live behind a bridge. I'll live in a tent. I'll live in the woods, anywhere I can go. You know, so what is going on in their mindset? Being a social worker, having your master's degree in the field of helping and being part of Buddy Dyer's homeless veterans outreach. What really goes on? Can you share with the audience what happens there?
Dave, one of the things that you may not know about me, I have been homeless as a veteran. And this was back in 1994. I came from Brevard County over to Central Florida, and I was living in my car. And I was working a temp job living in my car. And the reason why, it wasn't because of substance abuse. It wasn't because of mental health problems. It wasn't because of that, because I had been working over at the Space Center, and they had a huge layoff. And I couldn't pay my rent anymore. So I went ahead and a temp company I had worked for set me up with this full-time temp job, and I was sleeping in their parking lot. And during the week I was on the road, I was able to get, motel and some per diem and all this, and I was able to survive doing that. And I worked my butt off. I did, what I needed to do, and they hired me to be a full-time employee, which I ended up with about 12 years of employment from them. But during that period of homelessness, I learned an awful lot. One of the things, too, that Dave may not have mentioned, that I worked with SSVF, the Supportive Services for Veterans Families, as an outreach person. And our main mission was to try to provide homelessness, or try to provide housing for homeless veterans and their families. And a lot of times, doing the outreach, I'd have a clipboard with the applications running out in the woods, looking for these guys, filling them out, did all the preliminary paperwork, did all the preliminary things to set up their files, and turn it over to a case manager who then would interview and try to plug these guys into the resources that they may need. Homelessness is a threefold thing. It not only is there crime involved in it, but there's also substance abuse. And the main thing really in a lot of situations is mental illness. A lot of the substance abuse evolves because the veteran is utilizing alcohol and street drugs to self-medicate because of their mental health condition.
Right. So there were approximately 600,000 homeless in the United States, right? I think there's more than that, right? There's a lot of them that are not, demographically.
There's a lot of them not recorded.
Not recorded, right? Because there's a lot more than that. Well, approximately 1/3 of these are veterans. So that's nearly 200,000 veterans sleeping in our parks, on our streets, in cardboard boxes, under bridges, and in tunnels every night. It's actually a disgrace. Disgrace, says former Secretary of Veterans Affairs Jesse Brown, that we have men and women who served in American uniform who are out on the streets with no place to go and few prospects for a better life. See, veterans are twice likely as to become homeless as non-veterans because 90% are not homeless by choice. Many are battle-scarred, right? And are unable to cope in today's society. So they become unemployable, okay? So that's what IU means, okay? The IU HR 4369 we're trying to pass right now is the Individual Unemployable the challenges a veteran has, okay? Because we believe that all Americans who serve their country deserve honor and respect in life, and certainly dignity in death as well, if something did happen. So the company I work for is Dignity Memorial, has a network of funeral, cremation, and cemetery services provided all throughout the whole state, 2,300. And this just fell in my lap. I'm working there for 2 weeks, and someone said, "Hey, you know, we bury the homeless veterans." I said, "No, this is like, you're kidding me." And he goes, "Yeah, we do." I go, "Another divine intervention falls into my lap." So this program is designed for veterans lost in the system, left with medical examiners whose bodies are unclaimed and from no one will assume responsibility. So in partnership with numerous veteran organizations, Dignity Memorial providers help to ensure that eligible veterans receive the honors and death that service in life merited. And, you know, they're also tied in with our groups, Woody. That through the program, the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs provides eligible veterans with opening and closing of the grave site, grave liner, headstone, or marker, or graveside ceremony and burial in the National Cemetery. And the participants of this program is also American Legion. Disabled American veterans are also involved with this program. So the government statistics on this are approximately 40% of homeless men are veterans. That's a lot, 40%, right? Although veterans comprise only 30% of the general adult male population. And every night, over 271,000 homeless veterans sleep on our streets. The reasons are many. You discussed a little bit earlier, you know, by downsizing of the military, you know, reductions in educational benefits, physical and mental ailments, war-related mental illnesses, all contribute to the tremendous number of our nation's veterans who are homeless. Now, these veterans have served in World War II, Korea, Cold War, Vietnam, Grenada, Panama, Lebanon, Kuwait, all the military's anti-drug cultivation efforts in South America. 40% of homeless veterans served during the Vietnam era. Wow, that's a big number. 47% of homeless veterans served in your era, Woody. Tell us a little bit more about that. That's your time. Why is there so many, 40% of our homeless veterans are from the Vietnam War?
Well, one of the things is the way we were treated when we came back. And we were treated like pariahs. That wasn't a very successful military operation overall. And, you know, a lot of debate goes on whether we should have been there or not. And we followed, we did our duty. I'm probably one of the few draftees that's left around nowadays. And I went ahead and I went to regular Army, and I served my time over there. I served honorably. Most of the people did. But the only thing that you hear things like Me Lai and all that. So when we came back, we were called baby killers. Yeah. We were told we weren't in a real war, and there's all kind of, ramifications. We were not accepted. We were not hailed. There was no parades for us. It was actually detrimental to some of us to even admit that we were Vietnam veterans. So a lot of that does have a stigma to it, and a lot of the veterans nowadays still feel that. A lot of them still hold a grudge, even though the American public is becoming more and more and more acceptable. So anybody that's out there that sees somebody with a Vietnam veteran logo on, or flying colors or whatever, go up to that veteran and say, "Welcome home." That's the highest compliment that you can pay to a Vietnam veteran.
Not only that, thank you for your service. Yeah, that's great. But can you just ask them, peel the onion a little bit further? Hey, is there any way I can help you with anything? Some resources, anything like that. If you can do a little bit more than thank you for your service, if you know they're in a challenging time, I've done it in the past where I helped a veteran find a job. I picked him up, took him to the job, took him to the interview, made sure he got the job, and I call him every 90 days, and I do a follow-up to make sure he's working. And that's something that we need to do. We need to do checking not only of our neighbors, see how our neighbors doing, but if you know someone's a veteran down the street and he's hanging his flag out there, don't you stop by and just say hello, knock on his door, and just, hey, I was thinking of you when I drove by. I saw your American flag. I just want to say, hey, thank you again so much for your service. It goes a long way.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, this is time where we lighten up a little bit on the show, and we're going to talk about the 10 top movies that were voted on by veterans on National Vietnam War Day. 10 military time movies were voted on, and number 10, we have Casualties of War, 1989. A young Michael J. Fox and Sean Penn are immersed in a moral struggle after Bad Boy Penn's character take a young Vietnam teenager as a prisoner who was repeatedly beaten and raped. That was number 10. At number 9, Rescue Dawn in 2006, where Christian Bale was a U.S. Navy pilot when he was shot down near Ho Chi Minh Trail in 1966. He was tortured for months and emaciated, and then the war hero Dangler escaped his captors, surviving 3 weeks in the jungle. Amazing, an area where Agent Orange wasn't sprayed, right? Because he could hide. So this movie depicts the horrors of being a POW. See that one, Rescue Dawn. Number 8, We Were Soldiers, one of my favorites, right? Starring Mel Gibson in 2002, portrays intense action of Vietnam's war, first major battle of the Ai Drang, based on a book written by Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore, commanding officer of the 1st Battalion, 7th Cav, Hoorah! 1st Cavalry Division. Colonel Moore earned a Distinguished Service Cross for his actions. Hal Moore passed away last year. God bless those who served. Number 7, Hamburger Hill in 1987, centered around the story of the 101st Airborne Division. Yeah, Screaming Eagles, where I was a one-legged, which means I was attached to them, and I was never airborne qualified. You know why? Because my mother taught me to never jump out of a perfectly equipped airplane, right? Now, despite sustaining massive losses and taking Hill number 937, the U.S. abandoned the high ground only weeks after the battle ended, prompting severe criticism of military leadership and a reassessment of overall war strategy. Sound familiar, huh? Like Iraq? Okay, number 6, Born of the 4th of July, 1989. True story of Ron Kovic, played by Tom Cruise, was a guy who was gun-ho Marine, right? Turned anti-war activist because of a firefight in Vietnam where Kovic mistakenly kills one of his own men. He is then shot and left paralyzed, right, from the neck down, right? So then he comes back to the States where he collapses into depression, PTSD, alcohol, and horrifying stints at a VA hospitals. Makes this a psychologically trying yet identifiable film for veterans of all wars, right? Since that movie, now they have a high visible amount of security at VA hospitals. Yeah, they do with that. So we now get number 5, Good Morning Vietnam, right? 1987. Robin Williams was flawless as a charismatic radio DJ, Adrian Coronado, who broke the mold of the stereotypical dry armed forces radio broadcaster, right? He infuriated his superiors in the process. The film, despite the ongoing carnage of surrounding troops and even war, can have its lighter moments, especially when you have Robin Williams doing some great, his own stuff, his own little takes. And number 4, we are honoring this segment, a special segment today on the number 4 for R. Lee Ermey, who died just a few days ago on April 15th. This veteran actor and former Marine was best known as the world's scariest drill instructor, and this number 4 ranked film. Can anyone guess? How about this for a hint? Get the sand out of your panties and suck it up, Cupcake. The boot camp sequence on the film makes, yep, you guessed it, Full Metal Jacket, the classic it is. And God bless R. Lee Ermey. Did a great job in that role. And we're going to miss him. R.I.P. Rip. Okay, number 3, The Deer Hunter, 1978, which took home 5 Oscar Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actors. Christopher Walken, and Best Film Editing and Best Sound. Robert De Niro, Meryl Streep, and Walker stole the show in a story about friends from Western Pennsylvania who ship out to Vietnam together. The words Russian roulette will never be the same in your mind again when you see this movie. On to number 2, Apocalypse Now, 1979. Francis Ford Coppola's portrait of the Vietnam War is a head-first dive into the nightmarish devastation of war and an exploration into the breaking point of human sanity. No one is immune to destruction, and masterful performances by Marlon Brando, Robert Duvall, Martin Sheen, and others make any viewer question their own mental fortitude. And now, the number 1 show that was voted by veterans on March 29th, 2018, the official National Vietnam War Day is, drum roll please, Platoon! 1986, Oliver Stone's Platoon delivered Oscars for Best Picture, Best Director. Moral strife is at the heart of this Platoon, and the cast gracefully meanders on a tightrope between good and evil, posing questions of conscience at almost every turn. Poetic narrative provides compassion in the midst of the human depravity. Platoon gets to our core as human beings, as only tribulations experienced by Vietnam War veterans can. I saw this movie with my mother. Being a new recruit, it will take the wind out of you, right? Well, the Remember the Fallen shows pays tribute to the more than 3 million servicemen and women who left their families to serve bravely, a world away from everything and knew in everyone they loved. From the Ai Drang, the Ho Chi Minh Trail, Hamburger Hill, number 937, to Khe Sanh to Saigon. In the countless villages in between, they pushed through the jungles in rice paddies, heat and monsoon, fighting heroically to protect the ideals we hold dear as Americans. Through more than a decade of combat over air, land, and sea, these proud Americans upheld the highest traditions of our armed forces. The United States would not long exist were it not for their selfless commitment to service. All right, Woody, we're getting close to the end. I'm going to let you to close out the show and just make sure the audience knows how to reach out to certain folks that are part of this advocacy and do your thing.
Thank you, Dave. I'd like to thank you for having me as a guest on your show today. We did touch on a lot of issues from Agent Orange, veterans homelessness, veterans treatment court, veterans mental health. You know, there's just so many things out there that our veterans are plagued with today that a lot of people don't realize. And I think there's a kind of a thing now where our veterans are starting to become a little bit more invisible than what they were before. Any veteran out there that is seeking service, please, 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 the state of Florida has veteran service offices in each and every county. So go ahead and call and, ask for help, from these places. There's also a National Veterans Helpline. It's 1-800-273-8255, and then once you connect, press 1. And this is a helpline for any crisis or any difficulties that you might have. If you're homeless, they can plug you into the veterans homeless outreach programs. If it's a thing for medical or mental health, they can go ahead and plug you into a lot of the different things that you can get. You deserve, you've earned these benefits, you've earned, all of this. Please, please, if you need the help, get it. And thank you.
All right, well, it's getting 0:30 for the show, and I'm just about ready to go into rack ops mode. But before I go, relax. Never, by the way, right? One last promo. So go to Sergeant Dave at klrnradio.com for suggestions for the show's content. Or if you know a good piece of gear, a veterans advocate, I will get him on the show. Email me again at sergeantdave at klrnradio.com and go to my Facebook page and like the page. It's at Remember the Fallen, all one word. Repeat, Remember the Fallen, all one word on Facebook. You can also hit me on my Twitter handle at Sergeant Dave at Heroic Memorials. Or if you're not into the Tweety Bird chirping thing, you can go to my website at www.neverforgottenmemorials.org and mark your calendar every Thursday night on your phone at 8 p.m. Eastern Time at klrnradio.com. Select shows and tap whatever show is running, and that show would be me every Thursday night, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. If you want to go a little bit after 8:05, that'd be fine. That's when you miss some of the commercials, but 8:06 Eastern Time at KLNR Radio. That's an order until all the troops come home. All right? Fallout. Pop Smoke out.